Three men die and are standing at the pearly gates in front of St. Peter. St. Peter tells them, "To gain entry into heaven, you must tell me how you died." The first man steps forward and says, "Well, I got off work early today and came home to my 10th floor apartment. Walked in and found my wife naked in bed. I looked out the door to our balcony and saw a man's hands holding onto the edge. In a fit of rage, I ran out and stomped on his fingers and he fell. I looked over the balcony, and he had landed in some bushes and was still moving. So I unplugged our refrigerator and pushed it off the balcony, and it landed on him. Then I shot my wife and killed myself." St. Peter thinks for a moment and says, "Well, there's some bad stuff there, but given the situation, we can let it pass. You may enter." The second man steps forward. "I was exercising on my trampoline on my 12th floor balcony when I jumped a little too high and accidentally fell over the railing, but luckily I caught myself a couple floors below. I'm hanging there, holding on for dear life, when I hear someone come out. I'm thinking he heard my scream and was coming to help me. But this guy, he starts stomping on my hands. I lose my grip and fall to the ground. Luckily, I landed in some thick brush and I was hurt, but I was still alive. I'm kind of moving around, checking to see what's broken and stuff, when I look up to see this maniac push his refrigerator off the balcony. It lands on me and kills me." St. Peter is shaking his head. "Son, that is some horrible luck. Of course you may enter and enjoy paradise." The third man, having heard the stories of both men before him, steps forward with his head hung low and starts. "So, I'm sitting naked in the refrigerator. There was a father who was immensely proud of his 3 daughters. Every night he would take a stroll around the house to ensure that everything was in order. One evening, as he made his rounds, he heard giggles coming from his youngest daughter's room. When he reached the window of his second daughter, he heard quiet sobs. But when he passed his oldest daughter's room, there was complete silence. The next morning, as they all sat together at the breakfast table, the father turned to his youngest daughter and said, "I heard you laughing last night as I walked by your window. What was so funny?" She smiled and replied, "And thus, Daddy, you taught me to laugh whenever someone makes me feel happy." He then asked his second daughter, "Why were you crying last night?" She looked at him sadly and said, "That's because you taught me to cry when something makes me feel sad." Finally, he turned to his oldest daughter and said, "I didn't hear anything from your room last night." She looked up, grinned, and said, "Well, Dad, you always told me not to talk with my mouth full." 1. The tax office had a sneaking suspicion that a fishing boat owner wasn't paying fair wages to his crew, so they sent an agent to investigate. Agent, I need to see a list of your workers and what you're paying them. Boat owner, all right, there's Tom, my first mate. He's been with me for 3 years. I give him $400 a week plus 20% of the catch. Boat owner, then there's Bob, the deckhand. He's been working for a year, and I pay him $300 a week plus 20% of the catch. Boat owner. And then there's this guy who's a bit slow. He works about 16 hours a day, does nearly 80% of the work, and since boat expenses are sky high, I can't really pay him much. Sometimes I give him a bottle of rum, and he gets to sleep with my wife occasionally. Agent. That's the one I'm interested in. I want to talk to the mentally challenged guy. Boat owner. That'll be me. What did you want to know? To a professor of sociology, a professor of mathematics, and a professor of philosophy travel to a congress by train into Switzerland. Looking out of the windows, the professor of sociology happens to see a black sheep. "How interesting," he exclaims. "It appears there are black sheep in Switzerland." The professor of mathematics replies, "Dear colleague, you should phrase your statements more precisely. From our observations, it seems to me we can only conclude that there is at least one black sheep in Switzerland. Upon that, the professor of philosophy frowns and says, "Dear colleagues, it seems you both tend to make inexact statements. From our observation, one could only conclude that there exists at least one sheep in Switzerland who is black on at least one side." "Well, I guess we will never get the chance to prove any of these claims," replies the professor of sociology. That moment, the train breaks down with technical issues and stops. After killing some time waiting, the professor of philosophy suggests they all go and check out the sheep, so they do. They hike up the small hill where the sheep grazes and check it out. And surprisingly, it really turns out to be black only on one side. The other side is perfectly white.
While they are studying the sheep, the farmer comes up to them and asks what it is that they are doing here.
The professor of philosophy greets him and says, "That is quite an interesting sheep you have here." The farmer looks at them incredulously for a few seconds, shakes his head, and yells, "Now you gotta be the stupidest motherfuckers I met today. This is a goat, you idiots." 3. Some first-year uni students come home in the holiday for a surprise maths test of what's 2 plus 2. The engineer says, "Well, it's 3.75, but given the situation, we can round it to 5. The mathematician goes and works for a while, then comes back saying, "I don't know what the answer is, but I know one exists." The astrophysicist says rounding to the nearest million the answer would be ill. The psychology student says, "Can we talk about why you are asking this question?" The finance student subtly asks, "What do you want the answer to be?" The sociology student wants to know the implications of this question. The medicine student, who is the last to answer, says, "Well, that's easy. It's 4. I memorized it." 4. A German wants to bring his untaxed savings to a number account in Switzerland. He sneaks into the bank, looks around, and whispers to the bank assistant, "Pest, I've got 2 million euros in my suitcase." The bank assistant replies in a normal voice, "Why do you try to be so unsuspicious? Poverty is not a shame in Switzerland." 5. Nick had always dreamed of owning a motorcycle, so when he found out that a friend of a friend was selling his bike, he jumped at the chance. The bike, though a bit old, was in perfect condition, shining as if it had just rolled off the showroom floor. Curious, Nick asked, "How do you keep it looking so new?" The owner grinned and said, "It's simple. Whenever it looks like it's going to rain, I just coat the whole bike with Vaseline. Keeps the rain and mud from sticking. I'm done with riding, so why don't you take this tub of Vaseline with the bike?" Later that day, Nick picked up his girlfriend Amy as they were heading to her parents' house for dinner. Nervous about meeting them for the first time, he made sure the bike looked spotless before they arrived. Just before reaching her parents' place, Amy turned to Nick and warned, "Oh, by the way, my family has this really weird rule. Whoever talks first during dinner has to do the dishes." Nick thought it was strange, but figured it was no big deal. However, as they pulled up, Nick noticed something alarming. There were stacks of dirty dishes piled up on the porch, some reaching nearly 8 feet high, wobbling dangerously. Inside, every surface was covered in filthy dishes. It was clear that no one had washed a single dish in ages. Dinner was predictably silent. As Nick sat in the awkward quiet, he started feeling frisky. Figuring no one would say anything, he threw Amy onto the floor and had his way with her right there in front of everyone. No one uttered a word. After he finishes, he hears a crack of thunder and looks outside to see rain clouds forming. Remembering the tip about the rain, he pulls out the Vaseline. Amy's dad bellows out, all right, I'll do the dishes." 6. A friend of mine who was an officer invited me for a ride along. As we were driving along, he told me, I've been a cop for almost 20 years now. I can follow anyone, and I mean anyone, for just 1 mile down the road, and I can find something I can cite them for. I said, prove it. So he started following the next guy he saw. After a mile, he said, I can't believe it. He didn't do a single thing wrong. I'm going to pull him over and let him know. He pulls the guy over, goes up to him and says, Sir, I'm sorry I pulled you over. I just wanted to compliment you. I followed you for a while, and not once did you speed, change lanes without signaling, or do anything else deserving of a citation. I rarely see this, so I wanted to thank you for your safe driving. The guy looks up at him and replies, Well, you gotta be careful when you're drunk. 7. Yesterday, a friend called and asked if I could loan her $500 to help her pay her rent. I wanted to be helpful to someone in such need. I told her, let me check my account and Elle will call you right back. Before I could double check, her sister calls and says, Don't give her any money because she's lying. Her sister told me that she wants to use the $500 to get her boyfriend out of jail so they can be together for her birthday. I thought about it for a minute, then decided to go ahead and give her the $500. A few minutes ago, she called me from the local jail, crying about being arrested. She started screaming, asking, why did I give her counterfeit money? I replied, so you and your man could be together for your birthday. 8. 3 friends are in a hotel room in Soviet Russia. The first 2 men open a bottle of vodka, while the third is tired and goes straight to bed. He is unable to sleep, however, as his increasingly drunk friends tell political jokes loudly. After a while, the tired man gets frustrated and walks downstairs for a smoke. He stops in the lounge and asks the receptionist to bring tea to their room in 5 minutes. The man walks back into the room, joins the table, leans towards a power outlet, and speaks into it. Comrade Major, we want some tea to room 62, please. His friends laugh on the joke until there is a knock on the door. The receptionist brings a teapot. His friends fall silent and pale, horrified of what they just witnessed. The party is dead, and the man goes to sleep. After a good night's rest, the man wakes up and notices his friends are gone. Surprised, he walks downstairs and asks the receptionist where they went. The nervous receptionist whispers that KGB came and took them before dawn. The man is horrified. He wonders why he was spared. The receptionist responds, Well, Comrade Major did quite like your tea joke. 9. 3 women, one a brunette, one a redhead, and one a blonde, are standing at the gateway to heaven, awaiting judgment. St. Peter tells them that to enter heaven, their resolve must first be tested. He will tell them 100 jokes, and they must restrain themselves from laughing, or hell awaits them. He begins telling his jokes, and at the 10th one, the brunette laughs and is sent off to hell. At the 25th joke, the redhead laughs too and is also sent off to hell. The blonde woman, however, shows surprising discipline. St. Peter tells joke after joke, but she doesn't crack a smile, and it seems like she might make it through the entire test. But then at the 100th and final joke, she finally cracks and starts giggling. St. Peter can't hide his puzzlement at this, as the last joke was far from the funniest one. So he asks the blonde why that particular joke made her laugh. Still shaking from laughter, she tells him, The last one? No, I just got the first joke. 10. A man complained to his friend. My elbow has been killing me. I think I need to see a doctor. His friend quickly replied, Don't bother with that. There's a new computer at the drugstore that can diagnose any problem faster and cheaper than any doctor. Just give it a urine sample, put in $10, and it'll give you a diagnosis and treatment plan right there. Intrigued, the man decided to give it a try. He went home, collected a urine sample, and headed to the drugstore. He found the machine, poured in the urine, and deposited his $10. The machine buzzed, lights flashed, and within moments, a slip of paper popped out. You have tennis elbow, Soak your arm in warm water twice a day, avoid heavy lifting, and it'll be better in 2 weeks. Amazed, but also a little skeptical, the man wondered if this machine was the real deal or just a scam. Determined to test it further, he devised a plan. He mixed together some tap water, a stool sample from his dog, and urine samples from his wife and teenage daughter. To top it all off, he added a sample of his own. He took this concoction back to the drugstore, poured it into the machine, and deposited another $10. The machine buzzed and flashed just like before. After a moment, it printed out a detailed message. Your tap water has lead. Get a filter. Your dog has worms. Give him vitamins. Your daughter is on drugs. Get her in rehab. Your wife is pregnant. It's not your baby. Get a lawyer. And if you don't stop j***ing off, your tennis elbow will never get better. 11. On the first day of college, the dean addressed the students, pointing out some of the rules. The female dormitory will be out of bounds for all male students, and the male dormitory for the female students. Anybody caught breaking this rule will be fined $20 the first time. He continued, anybody caught breaking this rule the second time will be fined $60. Being caught a third time will incur a hefty fine of $180. Are there any questions? At this point, a male student in the crowd inquired, how much for a season pass? 12. A man comes running to the doctor, shouting and screaming in pain. Please, doctor, you've got to help me. I've been stung by a bee. Don't worry, says the doctor. I'll put some cream on it. You will never find that bee. It must be miles away by now. No, you don't understand, answers the doctor. I'll put some cream on the place you were stung. Oh, it happened in the garden in back of my house. No, says the doctor, getting frustrated. I mean, on which part of your body did that bee sting you? On my finger, screamed the man in pain. The bee stung me on my finger and it really hurts. Which one? The doctor. How am I supposed to know? All bees look the same to me.